Hi, everyone. I'm James Garbutt.
And I'm Denny Dumas.
And this is the Garbutt Dumas Real Estate Podcast.
We get pretty fired up about this stuff, so there may be some emotions shared in this podcast. We want to talk about changes that have happened and are going to happen throughout 2022. There's been a lot in the last couple of weeks even. So the provincial government announced the implementation eventually, we haven't heard when, of the cooling off period. The new federal budget came out and there's a lot talking about real estate and interest rates are going up. Where should we start?
Jeez. Oh man. Let's start with, let's start with the little guys. Let's start with our poor little first-time homebuyers out there. Guys, don't worry. The federal government has swooped in. They're here to save the day. They have this program for first-time homebuyers that's going to help you save $40,000 over 5 years. How exciting.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where they're just saying things to say things that don't mean anything, nor are going to help anyone, and potentially just trying to trick people and get votes. This idea of a extra savings account that a first-time buyer can put $8,000 into over 5 years for a year of $40,000 is supposed to help them get into the housing market. Let's talk about the timeline first of all. So over 5 years. In 5 years from now, if the federal government thinks that real estate is going to be priced the same or less than it is today, they're just kidding everyone. It's almost embarrassing to hear people that have been elected to try to help our country announce these ridiculous ideas like this. Like, this is comical, and I honestly can't think of anyone who's going to take advantage of this and how saving $8,000 per year over 5 years is going to put them in a better position than they are today.
I'm just going to say I think their heart was in the right place. This is just not going to work. We talk about it all the time when our friends, when our family, when our clients want to save money to get into the real estate market. The market outpaces your savings every time. So if you save $40,000 in 5 years, that's 5% down on a $750,000 property. So if you have saved, that's it. That's what $40,000 will get you. It'll get you 5% down on a $750,000 property. So $750,000 in 5 years might buy you a one-bedroom. It's not going to help your family get into a townhouse probably in most areas. It's going to get you into a $750,000 place. But guess what? If you're trying to be clever and you're trying to maybe invest in an investment property as your first purchase instead of a place that your family can live, you're just going to rent a place that works for your family, but you're going to buy an investment property. Now you have to actually put 35% down if you're an investor. That's double. That's almost double what it is today, which would have been 20% down. This is something else that they've announced. If you're an investor, you need to put 35% down on an investment property.
To be clear, that's not in place yet, and they have not discussed when that is going to come into play. They've just announced that this is something that is going to happen in 2022, apparently. We don't know when. It's a head-scratcher one for me. I get the idea behind increasing a down payment for investment properties. I get the idea is to try to get less wealthy people owning too many properties so that first-time buyers and people that live in the city and grew up in the city can have the opportunity to buy homes. The thing they do not discuss or address is that rentals are probably, well, now they are more competitive than a resale right now. So if you are a young person looking to rent a home, you are now cutting out people that would be buying properties and renting out homes. So if you rent a 1 or 2 bedroom condo in a fairly desirable neighborhood right now, you're probably going to get 30 or 40 people call you. If you're increasing down payments so that less people want to buy investment properties, so there's less rentals available, now those rent in those popular cities is going from $2,200, $2,300 for a 1 bedroom condo up to 2,800, 3,000, 3,200. Where does it stop when you're getting 100 people call you for a 1-bedroom rental? I don't know.
The important thing to note here is, of course, we all know there's not enough housing. This is a housing crisis. There's not enough homes in BC. So when an investor purchases a property, it doesn't remove that property from the market. It just repurposes what that property is for. It's now for a tenant instead of for the homeowner to live in it. So you're not actually removing supply when an investor purchases a property. More investors can afford properties, and the properties are more affordable, then the rents usually go down, or the rents don't continue to climb in the case of BC. So we're going back to the housing supply issue, which the government has decided they're pumping billions into, future housing developments. What does that really look like?
I mean, it's anyone's guess. It's nice that they're starting to address the problem and at least talk about it and try to game plan. The simplicity of what they have announced is a bit laugh-worthy. One of their notes is, we're going to put $4 billion towards affordable housing and working with municipalities. What does that mean? They're just going to hand out $4 billion to municipalities across Canada and say, good luck with your housing?
Yeah, go for it. Let us know how it goes. Here's $4 billion.
I was listening to a podcast recently. It was with a developer in Greater Vancouver, and he was saying, since people that work at City Hall have been working from home in COVID, trying to get a development permit has gone from 1.5 years to over 2.5 years. So I don't understand how just dishing out more taxpayer dollars to municipalities is going to speed up that process.
No, and there's something really important to note here as well. Construction is expensive. It's more expensive than ever. Land is expensive. All of those costs every single time get passed down to the home buyer. And in many cases, if they get passed down to the home buyer, if that home buyer is an investor, then it gets passed down to the tenant. So the climbing costs of housing, it's going to get better if there's more supply, but the path to more supply is expensive. And I don't see the more supply releasing pressure on the prices of housing. They're trying.
I just don't think it's going to catch up any quick enough. I think they said in the next year, they're anticipating 420,000 people moving to Canada. Roughly 75 to 100,000 of that is going to end up in BC. Are we going to get an extra 100,000 doors in the next 12 months? Definitely not. And when you look at the next decade, sure, maybe this, cash flow into municipalities like Greater Vancouver, like Greater Toronto, maybe that helps things a decade from now. But when you look at how many people are going to be moving to Greater Vancouver in the next 10 years, 75,000 roughly this year times 10, 750,000 is $1 billion on the high end. I'm just making that number up. I don't think that's how much is coming to Greater Vancouver, but let's say $1 billion. Is that going to provide housing for 750,000 people? And
we're also making a hilarious assumption here that those people are going to be able to purchase houses.
Yeah.
We're talking about probably 65,000 people that need to rent.
This year.
This year. Immediately. Yeah. They need to rent right now.
And what is their solution for that? They're trying to make it harder to buy property to rent to those people.
For investors, yeah.
Oh, man. It's, you obviously can sense our frustration in these things just because we are in the trenches every single day working with regular people who have regular jobs, who are teachers and nurses and engineers, and they are trying to get into this housing market. And although the governments locally and federally are saying that all these, changes in policy are to help regular Canadians, we are seeing it on a daily basis affect consumers negatively.
Absolutely. It's really, every time they make these big plans, these sweeping declarations, it usually affects the little guys. It usually does. It usually affects our first-time home buyers, because when it becomes more difficult to save while renting, realistically what happens is the 5 years turns into 10. And after 10 years, you're in your mid 30s, you don't own a home and you can't, and you're just renting for the rest of your life. It's sad, but we've been talking about housing supply for a really long time. Realtors have been talking about housing supply for 20 years. It's not anything new. It's not foreign buyers, guys. It's Canadians. It's Canadians that live here that want to buy properties. Foreign buyers, I think, is like what, this much? Is the government keeping something from us? Is there way more than we hear? Because we sell hundreds of properties and we rarely run into foreign buyers.
But they did also announce that no more foreign buyers for the next 2 years.
That's it.
But there's a bunch of stipulations underneath that. So if you're a student in Canada, doesn't matter if you're foreign, you can buy a house. If it's going to be your principal residence, you can buy a house. Doesn't matter. You don't have to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. So there's a lot of workarounds.
That's what foreign buyers are already doing. They're already buying them as students. They're already doing it. They already know how to get around this. Yeah.
It just seems like a number of things that are to try to get votes, to try to get people to see, they're really good people. They're trying to help the kids out there today.
So you bring up a good point with the trying to get votes. Let's talk about the cooling off period.
Oh boy.
That was really exciting. It's happening. The cooling off period is coming. But the funny thing is the market's already cooling off. So by the time they got this cooling off period thing squared away, it's not needed, right? I mean, it was never needed. But
the market goes up and down naturally.
Yeah.
These entertaining ideas and putting funny catchphrases in front of a policy like rapid, affordable housing movement.
Task force.
Creating task force for everything. It's not really going to have any effect. The market goes up and down naturally, and we're in a period right now where we've had 2 years of pretty rapid growth, and it's cooling off. It's plateauing. It's coming down in a lot of neighborhoods in Greater Vancouver, and it just seems like again their timing is poor.
Yeah, the cooling off period, we've said it before and I'll mention it again now. This is going to make it easier for sophisticated buyers to navigate around the cooling off period, and it's going to make it more complicated for first-time home buyers. As always, these things always affect the people that need the help the most.
It's really going to affect sellers. In a market that is already slowing, that is plateaued, it's challenging to buy and sell at the same time right now because you don't know if your home is going to sell quickly. So if you are buying first, you are pricing pretty competitively. And now adding another layer where a seller is going to have to wait a week period or however long it is just going to make it that much more complex for a downsizer to move into the condo because their kids are out of the house, or an upsizer who's selling their 2-bedroom condo to get into that townhouse. I think a lot of people are going to go the sell first, buy second route
once this thing comes in. Yeah, it's also dangerous. Yeah.
Which, back to our rental conversation, will put a lot of people homeless because their home has sold and they haven't found one to buy, because the savvy buyers are getting contracts accepted because they're putting in non-refundable deposits, or they're throwing higher prices at them because they have deeper pockets or whatever that may be. And then where are those people going to go that have sold? They're going to go to the rental market. But we're making it harder for people to buy properties to rent them.
Right. And there's no such thing as a 2-month rental, especially ones where families are moving in.
You know why? Because municipalities have said we don't want short-term rentals.
Yeah. So what do? You're a homeless. You're moving back in with good old mom and dad with your 3 kids and parking 4 cars in the driveway because that's all you can do. That's the only option. I'm dealing with this right now with a buyer who has an accepted offer to purchase a detached house. And we were very lucky to get almost 14 days for subject removal, trying to sell their house in that 14-day period. We're going to have to remove subjects literally moments after, hopefully, we're looking at offers. If we don't get offers, then we're going to have to make the decision to remove subjects without an offer, or we're going to have to let that house go. And we're going to have to decide if we should pull their home off the market, try again, wait till they find another place and try this whole process over again. That's literally the only option. They've got 2 kids and no family to move in with, and there's no chance they're finding a rental.
It's interesting to hear And this is a little bit of a vent. So if you don't like those and you don't like emotion, maybe hit fast forward. It's interesting to hear the, what is her name? Selena Robinson, the finance minister. It's interesting to hear her say, we're not going to listen to anything that the real estate industry has to say because they have a vested interest in this market being busy. It's quite comical to even hear that. We forgot to mention this the other day, but you know what one of the biggest tax income for the province is?
Oh, could it be property transfer tax?
Huh, weird. Do you know how much money that is? I don't, but it's billions of dollars every year
It's
in BC.
a lot. And when prices rise, guess what? The tax goes up.
When there's more transactions because the market is busier, guess what?
More taxes.
A lot more tax dollars. So it is pretty hypocritical, I think, of her to say that. Honestly, I think the real estate industry did a pretty good job of polling its members, spending hours and hours and hours coming up with some potential solutions that may help regular consumers because we deal with them every day. And to just get laughed at like that, it was a bit of a punch in the face. And understanding, everyone has an agenda. So when you hear someone like a finance minister say, we're not going to listen to anything they say because they have a vested interest, understand that that person has an agenda too. And it is definitely not in the consumer's best interest. We'll say that.
No, that's pretty shocking when you say that you're just not going to listen to the professionals in an industry. The arrogance that oozes out of that comment is pretty inexcusable. You've got a lot of very professional, very hardworking realtors. The board, they care. Realtors always get in trouble first. If something goes wrong, realtors get in trouble first, and we know it. And they really care about consumers. The whole reason why every rule is in place is for consumer protection. And to say that we have a vested interest in the market staying hot is absolutely hilarious. My husband and my daughter would like to see me more. And if I have to write less offers and read less strata documents, they're probably going to see me more. And that would be fantastic. So my interest is definitely in the market being chill, not in the market being absolutely insane. And I think everybody's is. Our buyers are losing their minds.
Most. I mean, most good realtors who are busy that have made careers out of this industry, they work heavily with buyers and sellers. In markets like this, it is extremely exhausting and frustrating to now take on the role of a psychiatrist and a psychologist and try to maneuver through this crazy market and lose 15, 20, 25 times before a buyer actually lands a home. It is exhausting. And so to say that we love this market, I mean, it's definitely not at the top of my list in terms of markets that I would prefer to work in. It is what it is. It's fun working with sellers. Absolutely. We look like superheroes every single week. But on the buy side, sometimes we look like we don't know what we're doing because we're, the last sale sold for 1.5. We're writing 1.6 and it sells for 1.9. And the buyer's saying, well, why didn't you tell me it was going to be 1.9?
Yeah, right. I love that. So the 2022 federal budget, we are hearing investor prices going up 35% for down payment. And they've announced that they're really going forward with the cooling off period, whatever that's going to look like. And even though they're not going to take our advice, it's going to be up to us to actually implement this plan. And they are going to help first-time homebuyers save $40,000 over 5 years.
Which is completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
Let's quickly touch on interest rates and what's going on there and where we see that affecting markets for the next 6 to 12 months. But if you've been paying attention to real estate, you are seeing interest rates climb. We saw a 0.25 jump in the prime rate a month ago. So that affects anyone that has a variable interest rate. And it sounds like later this week or early next week, we will see another potential 0.5% increase in that prime rate. So what does that mean for consumers? A typical variable rate today, this is before another 50 basis point jump potentially in the next few days. A typical variable rate is about 1.9 to 2.1, which is still wildly low if you look at the last few decades in Greater Vancouver. We saw them as low as around 1.1 year and a half ago. but 1.9 to 2.1. So if that goes up 50 basis points, expect your variable rate to jump potentially into that like 2.3 to 2.5 kind of range. Fixed, a typical 5-year fixed right now, those have gone up more than variable rates in the last year. Typical 5-year fixed is in the range of 3.6 to 4.1-ish. What does that mean for your monthly payment? Because that is really what you are signing up for when you buy a home and take on a mortgage, is you are buying yourself a monthly payment. And so that monthly payment on a variable mortgage right now is roughly $375 to $400 per $100,000 that you've borrowed, versus if you're going to fixed in that 3.6 to 4.1 range, your monthly payment's going to be closer to $425 to $450 for every $100,000 borrowed. So that gap is actually quite large. Usually the 5-year fixed and variable rates are a little closer together. And after this 50 basis point jump, we're definitely going to see that variable rate come closer to 5-year fixed. But as of today, what is that? April 13th. It's a big gap, 1.5, almost 2%.
It really is. And I mean, you think about, I'm hoping that, like everybody, that interest rates, the hike, that's a lot in a year, especially when you're coming off of the last 2 years that we've had, especially when they know that the market has increased already so much. And so a lot of buyers had to really stretch themselves to get into properties as it is. And they took on a little bit more mortgage payments just to make sure that they get into properties. And now, when we're talking about chunks of hundreds of thousands of dollars, you have to remember that in BC especially, properties are expensive. So most properties cost, like, what's the average property? Probably around $700,000. Like, if you're just throwing everything in together,
I would guess higher.
750, maybe more.
I think I saw stats from last month, and the average single family house price in Greater Vancouver was $2 million.
Right. So like across the board. Oops, sorry.
But the average condo was in the sevens.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So you're talking about that $300, $400 times 7. We're talking about per 100,000. That is a lot of money per month for people to have to shell out every time they increase these rates. It's a lot.
This is what naturally slows real estate markets. When you see interest rates climb 0.75%, on the fixed side, we've probably seen a 1.5 to 2% jump in the last year and a half. Those are big jumps, and that naturally cools markets. And I think the next rate hike will help slow it a little bit. Those neighborhoods that are already slower and already off peak pricing are probably going to feel it later this spring into the summer and fall. And those really desirable neighborhoods may just help them plateau and maybe come off peak pricing slightly.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The interest rates rising one more time would do it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to do it again. It would be a lot in a year because we're at 0.75 now. If they do another quarter percent,
it's crazy.
1% in 12 months.
When you're really looking at the big picture in Canada and of course in BC, inflation is at like an all-time high. Everything is so expensive, and now they're raising interest rates. Like, really, what's the game plan here, guys? We need to let's lay low for a few years.
Time will tell. Yeah. Should be an very interesting spring. We'll keep you updated as these changes actually get released, this cooling off period. We haven't really heard when it's coming into play, how it's going to be implemented, what the exact terms are, how deposit structures are going to change. We haven't really heard anything. In their announcement, they said they would like to see it in play by the summer of 2022. We'll keep you posted as we hear. But that is literally all we've been told.
Yep, that's it. But we're going to be in charge of running it. Yeah.